So we are really fortunate to have such a knowledgeable and experienced panel with us today. So I'm excited to hear their perspectives on forming elite IT teams. So throughout our discussion, I encourage our panelists to share their thoughts, candidly, and provide practical insights that would, help our audiences, who can implement in their organizations. And feel free to engage with each other's ideas, and let's make this as a dynamic and enriching conversation. And to our viewers, if you have any questions during the discussion, so usually in the LinkedIn Live, so there is a live chat. So you can drop a question or a comment in the section, and we'll do our best to address them, as we move forward towards the end of the event. So without further ado, so let's start with the panel discussion. So I'll start with Christine. So Christine, so what are the most critical qualities and attributes you normally look, when identifying standout IT leaders during the executive search process?
Sure thing. When I'm looking, so from my perspective, and I think I mentioned it some earlier conversations just with the small group, right, is that my focus is on people. Right. And a lot of times IT gets really focused on the technology, and a lot of times we're really trying to facilitate going towards the people, the people side and the softer skills in leadership. Some of the attributes that I really admire and would want in leadership, that they're thoughtful and mindful, maybe a little self-aware of themselves. They understand themselves and their weaknesses, and then also can leverage the strengths of the other people on their teams to be able to provide that broad scope. I also want someone who's got vision. I don't want somebody who's just going to execute a plan and then just whatever. I want somebody who's going to say, hey, how can we move this forward? Okay, I see us in 5 years here. How do we get there? I want them to have developing a path forward. And then also being a communicator. I've seen way too many companies get stuck in silos. And if it's not coming down from the top, it's not going to work. And then also having the right experience. And I'm going to say past successes and failures are part of that experience. I want them to be self-aware of their failures, but also learn something from it. I don't want someone who's just like, oh, I'm going to just bulldoze into the next opportunity. I want somebody who's going to say, you know what, this is what we didn't do well, and we're going to do it better next time because we know more. So that's kind of the high level attributes. I'll pass it along to the other folks.
Yeah, so Christine, I think you brought up a lot of great points. I think the biggest thing is the empathetic portion of that, right? So having the empathy with your team to understand what's going on, the just culture aspect of not blaming people. This isn't a blame game. This is how do we work together to grow a culture that builds a team that, to your point, is about the people first, the technology second.
Got it. So Kyle, anything you want to add?
I think we're going to have a lot of similarities in our answers today. Christine spoke to, what's your visionary thinking skills? Are you adaptable to change? What are your communication skills? How do they prove? Have you proven those skills in the past to be successful going forward? What are their capacity to align those tech solutions to the business goals, which is absolutely paramount, as we talked about that earlier. And then the integrity and the continuous learning mindset are essential when you're looking for a senior executive at this level.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay. So Brett, so as you know, we have a lot of landscape, changes within last, few years, right? So the landscape IT itself have changed from, legacy to cloud to digital, to AI. So, so has the landscape of the IT talent acquisition evolved in the recent years? And I mean, what are the current challenges and opportunities, to find top IT executive talent?
Yeah, so definitely, the landscape has changed. And I think the greatest change in the IT landscape is what we're requiring now for those entering the workforce. It used to be that we required degrees, we required, at least a bachelor's, right? That was a major requirement. We're seeing that shift to certification approach. And I think that's really based upon the fact that we have a talent pool of people coming out of high schools that are already talented in these areas. And so forcing them to go through a degree to prove themselves is almost worthless at some sectors and some points, because they're already knowledgeable in that skill set. And so having the ability to go out there and say, hey, I've gained certifications, I've gained the ability to understand the knowledge, and I can now step into that role and understand the culture and what's going on. Those are the elements we're looking for now versus having to have a degree. And quite honestly, I've hired people with degrees before and they haven't always panned out. I've hired people with no degrees that, came out of, being a ticket taker at a movie theater, and they were their best employees. It all has to do with the hunger and the ability to learn and to grow. I think also too, in terms of directly to the IT executive search, I think the main challenge is we're kind of relying upon that individual, that IT executive, to be a one-stop knowledge shop. And so if you look at, any LinkedIn post for a job, you'll see, hey, we need to have this knowledge set of technical knowledge sets. Here's the thing. This is my answer to my team. I am not the smartest person in the room. Just because I'm the leader does not mean I have the answer. Most likely the answer is within the room. So we've got to get out of the mindset of having IT executives that have a vast amount of technical skills, but to what Christine stated before, have a lack of that interpersonal skills and that knowledge of what my strengths and weaknesses are so that I can address those appropriately with the team, and having that empathy. So I think we've got to kind of find that balance of, hey, okay, you have some technical background, that's great, but we're really wanting you to lead a team and being able to grow and build a culture that's going to be dynamic and fruitful for the future.
Got it. Thank you, Brett. So, Christine, anything you want to add?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about that as well, because we're dealing with building teams that are virtual, and over the last several years, that's become so much more important. And I think the people skills are becoming so much more important. You can get on a Zoom call and talk tech for hours, and you will not get your team behind you. You need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to empathize, because that's part of the two-way communication, is the empathy as well as communicating. It's part of the communication cycle. And with the fully remote and then hybrid, the team, and obviously offshoring, it's been around for a while, but we've always had those challenges. But now it's even more pronounced because even our onshore teams are not physically co-located with us.
Yeah, so they're between offshore, on-site, hybrid, remote. So it's kind of, mixed and, more, right? So anything from you, Kyle, since you deal, more with the executive search?
Sure thing. I do love the way Brett talked about the evolution from a degree-based hiring process to potential skill or certificate-based. And with Christine's comments about being distributed in your leadership team, we talk about global competition, not only for workload, but also for talent. So how do we potentially tap into other global entities who may not have the same design or educational process that we do? So if we're so fixated on only hiring a bachelor's degree, there's other aspects that are going to take the talent as it comes up. So great point by both Brett and Christine. So thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah, that's a really good point. So Kyle, the next question. So can you share some of the effective, executive search strategies that you have been, proven successful as you're helping your clients, especially the high caliber IT executives, I mean, the executives especially?
Sure thing. Appreciate the opportunity. When you look at how to get out there and recruiting high caliber executives requires a multifaceted approach. It's not just a one-shop approach. You need to keep up with the rapid pace of changing technology and certifications and the legal requirements that are out there. What are you looking for, and what gaps are you trying to cover? What specialty networks are you tapping into? What IT association, industry-specific forums, networking groups? There's a lot of folks that are operating in these spaces that have tremendous talent that you could try to acquire those individuals from. Once you acquire them, what are you doing to integrate them? How straightforward is your onboarding process? How are you integrating them immediately and maintaining that communication once you provide them the offer letter? Every organization has a culture and it has its own nuances, but closing the gap to ensure they're inculcating into your culture is critical to helping them succeed once they get on board. Succession planning. Are you developing folks within your organization to potentially fleet up? If you're looking external to your organization because nobody there can step up and take that role, then maybe you have a training gap. and maybe there's some aspects that you want to be able to bring in to improve to allow your teammates to fleet up to that next level. Or you're looking to bring somebody in from the outside, so you want a fresh set of eyes. Because a lot of times when we're in an organization for so long, a little bit of complacency sets in and you don't see the cobwebs anymore. So it's good to have a fresh set of eyes come in, you know. And then the other piece for strategies for recruiting is showcase your company culture. What are the values that you bring? What is the vision that your leadership in your company and your organization bring forward? You know, I operate in the public sector, and our salary ranges are not equivocal to what takes place in the private sector. However, there are some things that the public sector can provide. You know, we have a tangible result for our purpose and tying our people to our purpose. There are times where we operate in a little bit lower stress environment sometimes, but also sometimes we have a little bit more paid holidays. So we're trying to offer and leverage those aspects to recruit other people in that are not directly tied to a salary.
Got it. Okay. Thanks, Yukai. So Christine, any comments from your side?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because it's actually leads into some of my comments for some of our other topics, is around culture, but and identifying that gap. If you are not willing to promote your own people, you need to understand why. Is it because of the lack of development, or is it because there truly is a gap? I think a lot of companies are forgetting that they need to develop their own people. They can't just get development from outside, although that's obviously, as Kyle said, that's one of the things, bring in some fresh set of eyes. It's also understanding that development counts, and you need to be looking at that internally. It's also part of retaining top talent is develop. You get the excellent job, the excellent ticket taker from the movie theater, and then you don't give them any opportunities, then you know that ticket taker is going to move on and move up without you.
Right. Okay. Any comments from your side, Brett?
Yeah, you know, to add to everybody's saying, it's a great discussion there, and also the thing too about companies, you need to be honest with yourself as leaders of why did the people leave. So as people leave, honestly, evaluating why did that occur and what happened? How do we change that mantra? Sometimes it is there's nothing that you've done as a company, but a lot of times you get to look at there's some specific things you've asked for or done, such as place too much value upon other ideas or other benefits that are really not the thing that you need to be getting out of the person you're hiring. So always looking at the tangible realities of what you're looking for and really hiring to that is what you need to be doing. So
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Brett. So Christine, obviously there's a lot of demand for IT talent, right? So and they're being so competitive nowadays. So how do you stay ahead and attract top candidates to your organization?
Sure. And I've given this quite a bit of thought, and there's a number of things, but I'm going to kind of reorder my list how I had it organized in my brain. I think the first thing is that the organization needs to understand what their roadmap is going to be and get ahead of the talent curve. They don't want to be, so you don't want to be the person going, I need COBOL developers, and then realize COBOL is so far gone, it's not even relevant anymore. You need to get ahead of that. You need to understand, where is it going, and start developing that function in your area. So number one, getting ahead of it. You don't want to be behind the curve, and get on the front wave, on the front line and do that. But then also to what Kyle was saying is, and this is just something I've observed from having tons of colleagues in IT that have moved around. One of the biggest things, and you can read tons of articles on LinkedIn about it, is work culture. If your work culture is toxic or doesn't respect work-life balance, doesn't provide training for managers out the gate, you're going to have people that are just it's going to peel off, and you're not going to attract the best people. And obviously, in another one that I also want to mention, and everybody knows it, we have to offer the benefits and compensation that are market or better. Obviously, we want to get paid. I know in the private versus the public sector is completely different, but in the same, I know the public sector, they try to be as competitive as they can within the constraints that they're set by the government or whatever. And then also development. And again, that goes to the ticket taker at the movie theater. If you don't develop them, they're going to find other opportunities. So you got to continually offer the opportunity. Now, they may say, I'm perfectly content in the job that I'm doing right now. And that's fine. But you have to provide them with an opportunity or they don't feel valued.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So Brett, anything you want to add?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think we get to the point of, not developing our own team members, and that causes the downhill culture, the cultural problems that destroy the culture in the long term. I think also too, as a business, you have to be willing to understand that IT is no longer just a department of your company. They are now a foundational element of what you're doing. And if you're not investing into that foundational element by providing those opportunities, then you're going to destroy your own IT culture, which is going to actually hurt your other business sectors. So making sure you're developing that IT sector, investing in that IT sector, even if it's not a profit center, it's not going to be a cost center. It should always be seen as a saving center. How do we save the company money and invest in them so they're saving us money in the long run?
Got it. So Kyle, any thoughts?
Just one aspect, what is your company's value proposition to retain its talent? Because we'll talk about, hey, from an organizational perspective, here's my selling point for this service, for this opportunity, for what we do as an organization. How about within the organization? What are you doing to retain? What is that value proposition so they know that there's going to be a return on their time investment by being a part of your organization? We talked briefly about the professional development opportunities, what additional certifications, workshops, conferences, what are those networking things that they can take the opportunity to participate in to continue to grow, and making sure that as you look to hire individuals, do they have a growth mindset? Do they want to continually learn and innovate and grow and support what you have going on within your organization? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. So Christine, Brett, so can you provide insights? You normally interview a lot of people, right? So what kind of selection techniques that you normally follow consistently that really help you hire the best, especially IT talent or executive talent?
Yep. So it's interesting. There's two main keys that I look at when I'm doing interviewing. And it's not typically on the technical side at all, especially because leaders, you want a leader that's going to lead people. And it's great to have the technology and experience, but it's better to have the leadership experience. And so I look at two elements. One is culture. It's kind of like, when you're buying a house, where you're going to buy at is important. Who you're going to hire is important. Culture. So the main key to any successful leader there that I've interviewed is that they have a foreknowledge that they're leading typically a group of introverted individuals who work well within their confined space, but also need to understand they're part of a larger team. So there's nuances there, right? So there's nuances in having to navigate those waters to be a vital, successful leader. So I want leaders that are going to be able to navigate those waters, understand who their team members are, and then from that perspective, be able to grow that team. And the second thing I look for is humility. And this goes back to what Christine said in an earlier discussion point, which is, where have they failed? And so one of the main questions I always ask them is, tell me a time where you have failed in your life, and what did you do about that? And it's going to be professional and personal, but what I want to see coming out of that is a humility and an understanding and introspectiveness of saying, I failed, I own the problem, this is what I did to resolve it. Versus we had a problem, somebody else's fault, I didn't take the blame and I didn't lead it, other than saying, hey, I got the reward out of fixing the problem later on. So there are two real keys when I'm interviewing people to look at and saying, hey, in your leadership, you got to have a good cultural mindset. And how do you build a culture? You also have to be willing to own the problems as a leader, because your job also too is to be the shield for your team. Right. It's to be the person that takes the brunt of what's coming at the team and shielding them from that, so they're aware that you're fighting for them.
I totally agree with you, because failure is basically one step close to the, achieving, real things, right? So, obviously we all have to, take the failures as a, learning steps, right? So, so Kyle, anything from your side? Any strategies that you follow for interviewing and selection?
Absolutely. If it reaches my level to be participating in the hiring process, there's three things that we really want to look at, from a behavioral interviewing standpoint. And we spoke to that a little bit, what are the past behaviors? How can we see what they've done in the past and link that to predictive future behaviors within the organization? Does it align with company values? We really love using the panel interview process, get a diverse group of individuals. I spoke to the fact that I'm not an IT expert, and we have about 104 different specialty skill sets in the manufacturing business that I'm in. I've got 7 types of engineers, got data analysts, and I got folks who fix helicopters. So we have a broad spectrum of individuals within our work center. So I want to make sure that the panel also encompasses a broad spectrum of individuals from different perspectives as well. And then also using, just as Brett spoke to, what are those simulated real world challenges that you can present to the individual for them to demonstrate their ability to hold some personal responsibility and to move forward with a growth mindset as well. Thank you.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you, Kyle. Christine, anything you want to add? Especially, when you hire IT executives.
Yeah. So one of the things too is that I love interviews. Interviews are great. I also know that there's lots of other things that need to be taken factor, because there's people that interview entirely too well for their experience. And I want to get, and maybe this is not kosher, but I want to get real world. Hey, you've worked with this guy, and especially when you start getting into leadership, their profile's a little bit more out there on LinkedIn, and you say, hey, you've worked with this person. Tell me more about them and how they react to stress in real life. I want to know. Do they lose their cool? Are they not able to accept or deal with stress, or things like that? I still want to know those things, and sometimes you just can't get a good get your thumb on somebody to understand them really without having some of that also that can context as well. So I want to say important interviews are absolutely important, because they show, can they speak well,
Right.
are they likable, are they accept. But in the end, I want to get some real world, like, tell me more about this person and how they work.
Kind of a testimonial, basically.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I mean, it's part of the reference check process, right? So are you talking about not just the reference check process, but also, let's say if you see someone in LinkedIn, let's say, for example, I'm there on LinkedIn. So my colleagues also will be on LinkedIn. So you would reach out to them?
Yeah, I would reach out to a colleague and say, or especially if they put, the people that put a recommendation out there are willing to talk
Right.
about them. But
Right.
sometimes, and I know how this happens, is that they're targeted omissions in a reference on LinkedIn or anywhere else. It'd be like, hey, this person's really great, love them, but maybe we didn't talk about this because we didn't want to put negative, because they're really a positive person. You really want to give them the best view.
Right.
And sometimes you get a little bit more context. And
And
not that it's going to be negative at
right.
all, but you
That's the
really
game.
want to know holistically what that person is like, and
Right.
what they're going to bring to the table.
Yeah. I mean, everybody will have challenges, right? But as
Right. Oh yeah. We all
Brett
have
said,
challenges, and we're
yeah,
100% human. Let me tell
right.
you, we're
Yeah, but how well,
100% human.
how well they are when they have
Right.
come across challenges,
Right.
and how would they resolve those challenges, right? So
Right. And having somebody self-aware that they know that they have gaps, that's great. And even you'll speak to someone and say, hey, so-and-so doesn't handle their stress really well, but they're learning, and I see them improving all the time. And, whatever, you can get that kind of detail out of, I would much rather have that than somebody who completely bottles up their stress until it blows. I want to hear about that kind of stuff.
totally get it. Yep. Okay. Cool. Brett, any thoughts? Sorry, Kyle, any thoughts?
No, I think she stated it perfectly. So
Okay, cool. Okay. And then next one, we'll move on to Kyle. So when retaining, the top IT talent is really crucial in the organization, right? I think we talked about this. So what are the normal strategies and programs that you normally recommend, when you, especially these leaders, if we have to retain them for a long time, right? Once they are onboarded. So we
That's
talked
a
about
great
recruiting, now
question.
we're talking about retaining existing talent, right? Existing leaders.
Great question. Absolutely. So you fished them in, you've hooked them, now you reeled them. So let's keep them. So one of the biggest thing is, what is the work-life integration and the culture they're going to operate in, making sure that there's a fundamental understanding from the beginning and not discovery learning, 2 months down the road that this isn't what I signed up for. What is their career path? What are they expected to do now, tomorrow, and next year? Have a clear pathway to where they want to go. And these are feedback discussions that are very direct, but maybe they don't want to progress professionally or they want to move laterally within the organization. But having those conversations early are beneficial to retaining, so you don't have somebody who's either burned out or unhappy with what they're doing. Along with that is this continuous learning and development. What other ongoing education, certification, conference process, what are those growth and learning opportunities that you provide at the company's expense sometimes, but sometimes at their own self-paced expense, because technology is always evolving. So what are we doing to keep up with that? And how are you enabling them to maintain that sharp skill set within your organization? Recognizing and providing rewards is critical. Making sure that you don't wait till somebody leaves to you acknowledge how great they were. Are they an employee of the month, of the week? What are you doing? What do you have on a routine basis to acknowledge the efforts that your great teammates are providing for you? And then what wellness programs are you providing to address mental health, stress management, and overall well-being? The IT environment, we spoke to this a little bit earlier, when some of the C-suite support individual CTOs and CISOs are leaving at the 18-month mark due to burnout, how are you combating that? How are you offloading some of those aspects? And what are you doing to make sure that you're looking after a person in their whole self, not just the individual technical self? Thank you.
Yeah, that's good, Kyle. I really like that point, right? So how do you handle the appreciation, rewarding, acknowledging is main thing, right? So I think we miss that a lot in most of our organizations we see. Even they've worked for 5, 6 years, 10 years, we don't really acknowledge on a regular basis the work they're doing, the hard work they're putting, the teams that they're building, right? So that is really more important, I think. Yeah, I really like that. So Brett, any thoughts?
Yeah, everything he said was exactly correct, and I want to add to that it is that appreciation aspect. Not every company can provide the dollar figure to keep people, but it also means that not everybody, everywhere there's a bigger dollar figure, is greener. The grass is not always greener on the other side. So you always have to sell your teams what you have and what you can provide, which is those benefits. One is that you're building a great culture, your appreciative culture of who they are and what they're doing, but also giving those opportunities for growth and development that they may not have elsewhere. It may be laterally, it may be outside of IT within your organization, but I think even just allowing them to see that, having those opportunities, typically builds in that mindset that I really want to stay here because they're really invested in who I am as a person, not just as an IT resource.
Okay. I want to add that it's a discussion I've had with a number of my friends and colleagues recently, actually, is we need to find out the people that work for us, their love language. I know that's kind of cheesy, but it's relationships, and you need to understand, that, and it's individuals, obviously. It's an individual is motivated by show me the money. I mean, sometimes I can be that way. Or other times they want to be recognized, and that pat on the back, it means the world to them. And just understanding those things and knowing that not everyone is the same can really help recognize somebody as an individual. And I think just appreciating an individual, you're not like just a number. And I know certainly there's organizations that are so big that there's no way that the CIO is going to have any contact with the level 1 developer. We understand that, but there should be a culture where it's acceptable to push the benefits and the rewards down and express our love languages and the things that motivate people. And I think it's very important to do that. And then I also wanted to say as well that I think a lot of companies get into this mode of, hey, our CEO is like 20 years from retiring, so there's no need to start planning succession. And I think it should be a all the time activity,
Right.
and it shouldn't be done like when, oh, hey, our CIO is getting a little long in the tooth. Let's start planning. That I think is wrong. I think that with having a succession plan, knowing that there is a potential for advancement and growth and especially for a leader that's really motivated, I think that is, even having that there, regardless of the time frame, is super important to motivate people.
Yeah, and to add to that, so the way I view IT in any organization is we got to get away from the hierarchy. We have too much of a hierarchy mindset that everything moves up. The reality is that we should be growing a tree. Our associates that we typically put at the bottom of the hierarchy are really the most important. They're the leaves that are growing your tree. They're gathering all that information and building all that stuff. And as leaders grow, you build leaders and build people, they're growing down into that tree and becoming roots and growing other trees. So what your mindset should always be. And at the end of the day, you as a leader should be able to be cut off as a root, move somewhere else and grow another tree, knowing that your other tree is going to continue to grow and actually may flourish even more because you're no longer there. So that's what you're always trying to build. You're trying to build that culture that grows the tree, that you're no longer needed as root. You've grown so many roots into that tree, you could go build another tree somewhere else, and that tree is going to flourish.
Understand. Yeah, that's really good point. So I think there are three ways I've seen, right? I mean, one-on-one appreciation. For example, the direct manager that you work for, so he appreciates with you to you on a one-on-one meetings or whatever, right? So, and then the group discussions, right? When you are at the entire team that manager is reported, so you appreciate in front of entire team. And there is a town hall meeting across the company. As you said, the C-level comes in and a couple of people will be called their names and then you recognize them, right? So it's kind of three levels of, recognition, rewarding, appreciation. So that will, I think, also helps a lot. So, right. Okay, cool. So next topic is, I think, favorite topic for Christine, as she said earlier. So how do you ensure the diversity and inclusion in your leadership, executive search and hiring process? What are the importance for building a winning team?
Sure. So diversity and inclusion is kind of one of my big topics because I over the years have been lucky enough to work with some incredibly diverse, and it's across the spectrum of teams. And number one, and maybe it shouldn't be number one, but number one, they're the most fun to work with. And honestly, I love to come to work every day because they're fun. But in order to get there, to get those diverse teams, I think you need to build, it's around culture again, build awareness and support of diversity, equity, inclusion in your area. You need to create a strategy. Just saying you want to do it is great, but what's your strategy? What's important to you? What are your principles that you're going to use to build that? And then continually, and this goes to continuous improvement, continually identify challenges and bottlenecks that are preventing diversity and inclusion or equity from flourishing at your company. And there, it could be a variety of things. I know personally from folks that have said, they get dirty looks when they come to an interview with locks. And I was like, well, that to me doesn't make sense because that's a cultural thing and it has nothing to do with your skill or your value as a human being. So how does that work? So identifying those things and kind of overcoming those biases, you have to build the culture to do that. And it takes a concerted effort by more than just one person to do that. And then continue to promote it and work on it. There's so many advantages for having a diverse team besides, having so much more fun, and there's better food at the potlucks, etc. But, we have a variety of experiences and backgrounds, and we're providing better foundations for decision making. We have a broader experience pool to pull from to make better decisions. And honestly, they're more innovative. They have all these different perspectives in the background that bring the innovation to the team. And also I would like to say that they also represent the diversity of customers as well. and we would love to have our companies reflect the customers that drive. And honestly, there's a lot of underserved markets that, because the companies that are serving them don't understand the diversity or the how to include them, they're falling behind, they're losing perspective, and they're not serving those underserved communities, and they're losing out, honestly.
Right. Thank you. Anything you want to add, Brett, to the Christine points?
She hit it nail on the head. The reality too is that, we got to get beyond looking at who people are and what their skill set is. You're hiring for a skill set. You're not hiring for what they may look like or what they may do outside of their work life. You're hiring for a skill set, and also too investing in that skill set. You may bring in somebody that only has 80% of the skill set you're looking for, but because they may have other traits that you're looking for as well, they're able to bring in that other traits that helps diversify your team, and thus you're able to build that skill set into them. So you're always looking for those areas, right?
Got it. Okay.
I'm just going to add, they bring the special sauce. They might not have all the requirements, but they bring the special sauce.
Got it. Anything from you, Kyle?
I'm on board for the potluck. So having a diverse team brings a variety of perspectives. It empowers faster innovation, and it fosters a greater breadth of knowledge for that, and it drives better business outcomes. And as Christine spoke to, they resonate with a global customer base. They contribute to a dynamic organizational culture. And when you commit to using diverse practices when you hire, it builds a robust, forward-thinking team that leads to a multifaceted global market and success within that.
Thank you, Kyle. So, Brett, so the next question, as you know, I mean, the technology is, rapidly changing, right? So a lot of technology is coming in. So how do you assess candidates' adaptability and, ability to lead in this evolving, IT environment during the hiring process?
So a lot of times I take IT out of the equation because adaptation is really specific, right? So it's not really specific on IT. Adaptation is a rather developed trait. I don't always think that somebody has it automatically. You develop that trait of adapting to things through multiple experiences. It kind of goes back to what Christine was just saying, right? You're bringing those different diverse thoughts, those different diverse skill sets. And so, leaders that have enjoyed a steady state have not been challenged, usually get easily stressed. They're the ones that usually burn out quicker. So those ones who have faced challenges both personally and professionally, they develop skills to address every changing landscapes, to develop the tools for the ebbs and the flows that come with stress. So quite honestly, the best leader may not even come from an IT background, right? They may come from an area where there's constant change. For example, I think of those people from a military background. I've hired a lot of people that were ex-military. They've had to adapt to a lot of different things. So they may be the best hire. They may not have the greatest skill set in the area that you're looking for, but because you're an ever-changing area and they're able to adapt quicker to those changes, they may be the best hire in that specific instance. So you're always looking for that. And then they're able to take on technologies and to do things that they dominate to it, right? They find the way to succeed. And so that's also what you're going to look for, that adaptation skill is, are they willing to get outside their comfort zone and succeed in the areas that they need to succeed in?
Yeah, great point. So comfort zone is the key thing, I think, here. So how flexible you are, not being in the comfort zone all the time, right? I mean, that's the way to changing of technology, right? Okay, that's good. Christian, anything you want to add?
I want to just add that this all ties back to somebody who's failed. You need to have people that have failed, honestly, and through failure you learn. And I think I've even reading several new articles recently on LinkedIn was about I think it was Ray Dalio was saying something about how people that don't struggle don't make good leaders. Essentially, is that if you don't have that struggle in your background, or you haven't had to work hard for it, like hard, sometimes you don't have those qualities that make you a good leader.
Right. Yeah, so that again goes back to the not diversity in terms of the people, but diversity in terms of the environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's good. Kyle, anything you want to add in terms of changing landscape?
Yes, I love the way Brett talked about taking the technical aspect out of this. And I often speak to as we hire individuals, I need the best fit. I don't need the best candidate. They can be the fastest, smartest, most cognitively capable. I need who's going to fit, who's going to demonstrate, as Christine spoke to, a operational and a deeper understanding of controlled failure, how to build failure as a learning tool, and where do they go from there. To not think that everything is no fail. Everything has an opportunity to grow from, and what are you doing to shape that going forward?
Totally agree. Thank you, Kyle. So Kyle, I think the next question again goes back to you. So what role does the company culture play in attracting and retaining? I know we talked about it, but it's kind of a repeat. But so how do organizations build a culture that really attracts and appeals to the leaders?
Kishore, there's probably going to be some similar themes that we see continued throughout this panel today, and then we talked about alignment of values. When you're looking to hire somebody, does their value align with the culture of the organization they are now joining, from a personal and a professional standpoint? And what you don't want to do is have a misalignment, and then that mismatch leads to discouragement and high employee turnover. So how are you aligning those values? Where are you enabling innovation and risk taking? We talked about creating an environment where controlled failure is part of the learning process. Again, we're not talking about complete violations of cybersecurity, but what small steps can be taken place to allow somebody to grow from those controlled failure aspects, so that innovation and risk acceptance as people grow and mature. Right. Then we talked about the alignment of values, but does your organization have a clear vision and a clear mission for where it is and where it's going? So you're here, you want to go here. Do you have a clear roadmap that you're making sure that everybody within the organization sees and they understand the road that they're on? How are you empowering those individuals? How are you building trust? What autonomy and strategic decisions do you allow these leaders to make? Or are they forever underneath somebody's thumb, so to speak? Does your organization offer a collaborative atmosphere? How are the different work centers engaging with one another? And Brett talked about this, that your IT section should be a dynamic, functioning portion of your organization, not somebody that's just operating in the server room in the closet. But how are they collaborating, moving the business unit forward? Do they understand the operations? And do your operations people understand the impact of the IT network? How about your leadership team? What sort of supportive leadership dynamic do you have? Are they leaders who act as coaches and mentors? Or are they leaders who act as managers and micromanagers? Understanding what are you doing at the top to ensure that that happens all the way across? And then, something we'll throw out there, what is your broader community engagement? How are you engaging with the neighborhood? How are you engaging with those around you? How are you enabling your employees who may be distributed, who can impact their neighborhood wherever they are? What are they doing in their community, and to stay relevant, not only on the professional side, but on the personal side? Those are some of the things that we want to use to ensure that we retain our top talent.
Sounds good. Any points you want to add, Brett and Christine?
Yes, I think from my perspective, he did a great job to hone in on the things. I think another aspect also to look at is that comes down to three things: time, people, and money. Are you giving your leader the time to not just develop a strategy, but enact the strategy that person has? The people that are going to support him and that he's going to support, and also the money to do that, right? So, sometimes the money is not about what technology we're purchasing, but how much are we investing in our team, both inside the organization and outside the organization. I loved how he put the fact of giving the people opportunity to do things outside in the neighborhood, right? So are you allowing them that effort and time to go do that? And you're providing resources to get that done, whether it be a golf event to raise money for an organization or a 5K walk, whatever it may be, that you're instilling those values into your team. And then that leader also has that instilled value in them, that you care about what they're doing and what they want to do for the team.
Got it.
Yeah, and I just have one point of additional, and it goes to what Kyle was talking about, but it's also something I've just seen a lot lacking in several of the companies that I've observed, is that they do a great job of promoting people internally, but then they don't develop their leadership skills, don't develop them as managers. They kind of go sink or swim. And unfortunately, with the pace of work, they're gonna sink, and the team sink with them, unfortunately. So it's again, it's the time, people, money. Again, it goes to that, but we need to develop our managers. We need to continually train them and give them information and yeah, promote them not just in their title, but also in their knowledge and their experience.
Okay, so don't promote wrong people, basically, or identify. I mean, even if you promote, but give them the tools and knowledge required to be successful in that role. So, got it. Okay, sounds good. So, Brett, can you share any success story or case study where you had executive search efforts resulted in getting a winning IT leadership team, and what lessons you have learned from the experience?
Yeah, so I think the greatest example would be the hiring of our previous CIO. Our department had gone through some cultural changes and challenges and marked divisions between teams. So initially, an interim contract to CIO was brought in to change the culture, develop a more cohesive organization. Did a great job of developing that, right? Laid a great foundation of where we wanted to go from an IT organization. And then as that foundation was built up, it allowed the newly hired CIO to cultivate and establish a culture where the organization felt the freedom to not only challenge each other, but to build bridges where silos used to be. His willingness to be open to suggestions, to be honest with not being the smartest person in the room, to build trust with each leader, allow them to run their teams, develops a successful department that could both meet the internal and external needs of the business. I mean, it kind of goes back to that cultural element and back to Christine, what she was saying, willing to fail, willing to have those opportunities to address those failures and to grow beyond them, which then shows that ability to say, hey, you as a team could fail too. We can all fail together as long as we're learning how to fix the problems together and growing beyond it.
So giving them the chance to either try out new things, right? So
yeah, and really trusting that CIO. So when bringing that person, when you bring that executive leader in, you got to trust that leader knows what they're doing and give them the skills and the opportunities to do that. You still also have to invest in that leader to grow them as a leader. It's not just, hey, it's a sink or swim for the CIO either. They are still growing. I don't care if they came from a Fortune 500 company or if they led a small company of 10 people. I don't care. They're both are still growing. Are you investing in them to grow and trusting them?
Sounds good. Christine, anything you want to add, like lessons learned from your previous experiences? Any kind of success stories? Hiring top leaders, executive leaders?
Yeah, so I want to say, Brett, so some of the examples that I've seen of really successful CIOs have been almost precisely, it's like you told the story of it, is they did a lot of soul searching in the organization before they brought in a new CIO, and they probably got to the nuts and bolts into the real kernel of what they wanted to do before they even started getting, onboarding a person to lead it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's, Brett talks directly to that. So and I loved it. It was great. It was a great example of how it was supposed to go. So
okay, sounds good. I think few more last questions. I think I have two more. I think we have 5 minutes time. Just checking on the timing as well. So Kyle, we know, I mean, we have a lot of remote work environment and hybrid and all this stuff, right? So have you seen how the IT executive search and hiring process has changed, and what do you normally consider keeping in mind when recruiting these leaders, especially being a and hybrid?
Absolutely, Kishore. So there's a couple of things that we're looking for. Is how can we assess their remote work skills? Remember that activity is not productivity. What measures of effectiveness have they demonstrated in the past, and not just measures of performance? I can move my mouse, but am I moving the business unit? Understanding those differences and what have they demonstrated in the past to be successful in a remote or a hybrid environment? Where do they demonstrate through interview process and through those sort of leadership scenarios, the self-discipline and the time management to be able to accomplish this and lead from a remote site? what history they have leading in this aspect to achieve success.
Mhm.
How well do they fit culturally? What are again, we go back to the candidate's values. Do they align with the company culture? Or are they looking for a remote only job because they never want to have a personal interaction? What sort of aspects are they coming from versus what are you needing to do? I happen to work in the manufacturing space, and the reality is in a blue collar environment, you can't manufacture from home. So although we have to have touch labor on items, we do have support structure in place where some folks are operating remotely. So how do we work that hybrid environment where there is some haves and have-nots? And where do we congeal to make sure that from an organizational standpoint, we're moving forward collectively? And then again, I go back to the performance metrics. What clear metrics do you have to demonstrate success in moving the business forward? We don't need people to exist. We need them to be able to excel. So that's the perspective that I come from. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Kyle. So Christine, so finally, what advice would you give to an organization looking to improve their, IT executive search and overall talent acquisition process?
Sure. And honestly, throughout this discussion, we've kind of hit on the things that I think are most important, but I think the biggest theme is that we need to look and be reflective internally of our organization, our processes, our practices, how we develop, how are we empowering people. Need to have that self-awareness as a company, as a person, whatever. We need to have that before we can really be successful, bringing in leadership and developing our teams. So that's like number one theme. Like pretty much every answer we gave here has taught me that it's internal looking. And then also just continually develop internal talent as well as external. We need to continually develop people. The only way that we can ensure that people are continuing to be productive and succeed is to develop. And it is that it as a team, as an individual, as an executive, as a leader. I mean, I don't care what your role is. As the broom sweeper in the factories, everyone needs to be able to develop to make things go much better and build that successful team.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. I think as we approach, the end of our LinkedIn Live event, I really wanted to express my, gratitude to all three of you, our panelists, for valuable contributions, and thank you all of you. And our viewers are, joining us today. So thank you all for joining and listening to this event. And so the event will be recorded, so you can even watch, in case there are people who registered but did not attend, so they can even watch the recording. So I hope you have gained valuable insights that will help you navigate that path. So thank you for being part of this event, and we look forward to seeing you in the future discussions. And until then, stay innovative, stay competitive, and stay excellent.